They mocked me for being old, so I took away their comfort forever, you know. People always say that revenge is a dish best served cold. But let me tell you something, sometimes it's served at exactly room temperature, and it tastes absolutely perfect. My name is Margaret. I'm 73 years old, and this is the story of how I turned my neighbors' lives upside down with nothing but patience, careful planning, and a lifetime of experience they clearly underestimated. It all started 3 years ago when I moved into what I thought would be my dream retirement home. Picture this, a beautiful little house on Maple Street in suburban Ohio, with a white picket fence, rose bushes in the front yard, and the kind of neighborhood where you'd expect kids to ride their bikes and families to have barbecues on Sunday afternoons. I had saved for 40 years to afford this place, working double shifts as a nurse until my hands were too arthritic to start IVs anymore. This house represented everything I had worked for: peace, comfort, and dignity in my golden years. But the universe, as I've learned, has a twisted sense of humor. The trouble started on my very first day. I was outside watering my newly planted petunias when I heard this loud, obnoxious laughter coming from the house next door. Now, I'm not one to judge people quickly, Lord knows. I've seen enough in my nursing career to understand that everyone's fighting their own battles. But something about that laughter felt cruel. It was the kind of laugh that makes your skin crawl. You know what I mean? That's when I met Derek and Jessica Morrison, both in their early 30s. Along with their friends who seemed to practically live at their house. Derek worked in tech, one of those cryptocurrency guys who thought he was God's gift to the financial world. Jessica was what they call an influencer, always posing for photos with her perfectly contoured face and designer everything. Their friends were cut from the same cloth, young, loud, and absolutely convinced that the world revolved around them. The first incident happened that very evening. I was sitting on my porch with a cup of chamomile tea, watching the sunset and thinking about how peaceful my new life was going to be, when Derek stumbled over to my fence. He was clearly drunk, holding a beer bottle and swaying like a tree in a windstorm. "Hey there, Grandma," he slurred, and I could smell the alcohol on his breath from 6 feet away. "Welcome to the neighborhood. Hope you don't mind a little noise. We like to have fun around here." Then he laughed, and it was that same cruel sound I'd heard earlier. "Don't worry though, we'll try to keep it down during your bedtime." "What time do old folks usually hit the hay?" 7, 8. I just smiled and said, "Oh, don't worry about me, dear. I'm quite adaptable." But inside, something cold and calculating was already taking root. You see, when you've spent 50 years dealing with difficult patients, drunk surgeons, and hospital administrators who think they know better than the nurses who actually do the work, you develop a very specific skill set. You learn to observe, to wait, and to strike when the moment is exactly right. That night, they threw a party that lasted until 4 in the morning. The music was so loud my windows rattled. People were screaming, laughing, and at one point, someone was definitely getting sick in the bushes that separated our properties. I didn't call the police, not yet. I just sat in my bedroom, making notes in a little journal I'd started. Timestamps, descriptions, witness observations, old habits from documenting patient care, you might say. The next morning, I went over to introduce myself properly, bringing a plate of homemade chocolate chip cookies as a peace offering. Jessica answered the door in a silk robe that probably cost more than my monthly Social Security check, looking like she'd been hit by a truck. "Oh," she said, looking me up and down with barely concealed disgust. "You're the old lady from next door." "Margaret," I said, extending the cookies. "I brought these as a welcome gift. I hope we can be good neighbors." She took the plate but didn't invite me in. "Look, Margaret, I'm going to be real with you. We're young, we work hard, and we like to blow off steam. If you're looking for one of those quiet retirement communities, you might want to consider moving. This neighborhood is for people who are still living their lives, if you know what I mean." The dismissal was clear, but I kept smiling. "Oh, I understand completely, dear. I'm not going anywhere. This is my home now." Her expression shifted slightly, like she was trying to figure out if that was a threat or just an old lady being stubborn. "Well," she said finally, "just don't expect us to change our lifestyle because you moved in. We were here first." Actually, they weren't. I had done my research. They'd only lived there for 8 months. But I didn't correct her. Not then. Over the next few weeks, the harassment escalated. It wasn't just the parties, though those continued every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night like clockwork. Derek started making comments every time he saw me, Morning, Fossa, he'd call out when I was getting my mail. Still breathing, I see. His friends thought this was absolutely hilarious. Jessica was more subtle, but somehow worse. She'd have loud phone conversations on her back deck about decrepit old people who ruin neighborhoods, and how some people don't know when it's time to move to a nursing home. She'd time these conversations for when I was working in my garden, making sure I could hear every word. But the breaking point came on a Tuesday in September. I had been living there for about 2 months, and I was starting to find my routine. I had joined the local library's book club, started volunteering at the elementary school reading program, and was genuinely trying to build a life in this community. That day, I was expecting a visit from my granddaughter Emma, who was driving up from Cincinnati to see my new place. Emma is 25, works as a social worker, and is honestly the light of my life. Her parents, my son and daughter-in-law, had been killed in a car accident when she was 16, and I'd raised her through high school and college. She's the reason I kept going after losing my Harold to cancer 5 years ago. She's smart, kind, and fierce when she needs to be. Everything I'd want in a granddaughter. She arrived around 2 in the afternoon, and we spent a lovely few hours touring the house, looking at old photo albums, and catching up on her work. Around 5 o'clock, we decided to sit on the front porch with some iced tea and watch the world go by. Emma was telling me about this case. She was working on an elderly client who was being financially exploited by his nephew. When Derek and his crew came stumbling out of their house, they were clearly drunk again, even though it was a Tuesday afternoon. Derek saw us, and his face lit up with that cruel expression I'd come to know so well. "Well, well," he called out. "Looks like the nursing home had a field trip." His friends started laughing like hyenas. Emma's jaw tightened, but I put my hand on her arm. "Ignore them, dear," I said quietly. But Derek wasn't done. He stumbled over to our fence, beer in hand, and looked Emma up and down in a way that made my skin crawl. "Hey there, sweetheart, you, the granddaughter. What are you, the caretaker? When you gonna move Granny here into a facility where she belongs?" "Excuse me." Emma stood up, and I could see the fire in her eyes that reminded me so much of myself at her age. "I'm just saying," Derek continued. "It's kind of sad, you know, old people clinging to independence when they clearly can't handle it anymore. Look at her, she's probably got dementia, can't remember where she put her keys, needs help getting to the bathroom." "Stop." Emma's voice was deadly quiet. "You need to stop talking right now." Derek laughed. "Oh, what are you gonna do? Call the police on me for expressing my opinion on my own property?" He turned to me. "Face it, Grandma, you don't belong here. This is a neighborhood for people with actual lives, actual futures. You're just taking up space, waiting to die." The words hit me like a physical blow, not because they hurt. I'd heard worse from patients' families over the years, but because of the pure, casual cruelty behind them. This wasn't someone having a bad day or dealing with their own problems. This was someone who genuinely believed that my age, my stage of life, made me less worthy of respect, dignity, and a place in the world. Emma was on her feet, ready to march over there and give Derek a piece of her mind that would have left him speechless for a week. But I stood up too and put my hand on her shoulder. "It's all right, dear," I said, loud enough for Derek to hear. Some people were raised differently than others. Their mothers clearly didn't teach them about respect. I looked directly at Derek. "But that's okay. Sometimes life has a way of teaching lessons that parents missed." Derek just laughed and stumbled back to his house with his friends, but I saw something in his eyes, a flicker of unease, like he'd heard something in my tone that he couldn't quite identify. That night, after Emma left, I sat in my kitchen with a cup of tea and that little journal I'd been keeping, but instead of just documenting their behavior, I started researching. You see, when you've lived as long as I have, you learn that information is power, and I was about to become very, very powerful. Derek Morrison, age 32, worked for a startup called Blockchain Innovations. I found his LinkedIn profile, his company's website, even some podcast interviews where he talked about disrupting traditional financial systems and bringing wealth to the next generation. Interesting guy, very proud of his image as a young professional making waves in the tech world. Jessica Morrison, age 29, had an Instagram account with 50,000 followers where she promoted lifestyle brands and wellness products. She called herself a digital entrepreneur and lifestyle guru, posting carefully curated photos of her perfect life, perfect marriage, perfect home. She made money through sponsorship deals and affiliate marketing, selling everything from skincare products to meditation apps. But here's the thing about social media. It's all public. Every post, every comment, every tagged location. And when you're my age, you have something young people don't. Time. Lots and lots of time. Over the next few weeks, I developed what you might call a comprehensive understanding of my neighbors' lives. I learned their schedules, their habits, their routines. Derek left for work every morning at 8:15 sharp, always in his Tesla, always with the same overpriced coffee from the shop downtown. Jessica did yoga on their back deck every Tuesday and Thursday at 10 a.m., live streaming it for her followers. They ordered takeout every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from the same 3 restaurants. Their parties followed a predictable pattern. Derek would invite his crypto buddies, Jessica would invite her influencer friends, and they'd spend the evening trying to outdo each other with stories about their success. I also learned about their vulnerabilities. Derek's company was struggling. I found some concerning posts on industry forums about missed payrolls and investor complaints. Jessica's follower engagement was dropping, and several of her recent sponsorship posts had comments questioning the authenticity of her lifestyle. They were leveraged to the hilt on that house, driving cars they couldn't really afford, and maintaining a lifestyle that was starting to crack at the edges. But I wasn't ready to move yet. Good revenge, like good nursing care, requires patience and perfect timing. The harassment continued throughout the fall. Comments about my age, my appearance, my right to exist in their neighborhood. Derek started revving his Tesla whenever he saw me outside, just to startle me. Jessica began timing her outdoor phone calls to coincide with my morning coffee on the porch, making sure I heard her complaints about old people who don't know when to give up. Their friends joined in too. I started getting anonymous notes in my mailbox. This neighborhood is for families, not old folks' homes, and have you considered assisted living? One morning I found garbage scattered across my front yard, and I'm pretty sure I saw Derek's friend Mike sneaking away from my property around midnight. But the final straw came in November, right before Thanksgiving. Emma was supposed to visit again, bringing her boyfriend David to meet me for the first time. I had been planning this for weeks. Roasted turkey, all the traditional sides, apple pie made from my grandmother's recipe. It was going to be perfect. The night before Thanksgiving, Derek and Jessica threw what they called a Friendsgiving party. It started around 7 p.m., and by 9 o'clock, the music was so loud I couldn't hear my television. By 10 o'clock, people were screaming in their backyard. By 11 o'clock, someone was throwing up in my rose bushes again. I put on my robe and slippers and walked over to their front door. The music was so loud I had to pound on the door for 5 minutes before Derek answered. Drink in hand, pupils dilated from whatever else he'd been consuming. Well, he slurred. If it isn't the neighborhood watch. What can I do you for, Granny? Derek, I said as calmly as I could. I have family coming tomorrow for Thanksgiving dinner. Could you please ask your guests to keep the noise down? It's nearly midnight on a Wednesday. He laughed, that cruel laugh, and called over his shoulder, Hey everyone, Grandma Margaret wants us to keep it down because she has her little turkey dinner tomorrow. The living room erupted in mocking laughter. Listen, Margaret, Derek said, stepping closer and lowering his voice, I'm going to explain something to you one more time. This is our neighborhood. We're young, we're successful, we're the future, you're the past. And the sooner you accept that and move somewhere more appropriate for someone your age, the better it'll be for everyone. I see, I said quietly. And if I don't, his smile turned nasty. Then, I guess you'll just have to get used to the noise. Maybe invest in some good earplugs. Or, better yet, hearing aids. I hear they're pretty good these days. Behind him, Jessica appeared, swaying slightly. Oh my God, is she seriously complaining again? Margaret, honey, maybe it's time to face reality. You're old, you're alone, and you don't fit in here. Why don't you do everyone a favor and find a nice senior community where you can play bingo and complain about your medications with people your own age? Yeah, Derek added, somewhere with a nice early bedtime and soft food. This neighborhood is for people who are actually living their lives. I stood there for a moment, looking at these two people who had made the last few months of my life miserable, who had insulted not just me, but my granddaughter, who had made it clear that they believed my age made me less deserving of basic human respect. And I smiled. You know what? I said, you're absolutely right. I am old. I am alone most of the time. And I don't fit in with your crowd. I paused, letting that sink in. But there's something you two don't understand about being old. When you reach my age, you stop caring about what other people think. You stop worrying about consequences. And you have absolutely nothing left to lose. Derek's expression flickered slightly, but Jessica just rolled her eyes. Whatever that means, Margaret. Just go back inside and let us enjoy our party. Oh, I will, I said. Happy Thanksgiving. You too. I hope you enjoy it. It might be your last one in this neighborhood. I walked back to my house, and instead of going to bed, I sat down at my computer and got to work. You see, while I'd been observing Derek and Jessica, I'd also been learning about their business dealings. Derek's cryptocurrency company wasn't just struggling, it was on the verge of collapse. Several investors were asking hard questions about missing funds and failed promises. Jessica's influencer business was built on a foundation of lies, fake followers, inflated engagement numbers, and products she didn't actually use. But more importantly, I'd discovered something else. Their house, their cars, their entire lifestyle was financed through a complex web of credit that was about to come crashing down. Derek had been using company funds to maintain their personal expenses, and Jessica had been inflating her income on loan applications. By 6 a.m. on Thanksgiving morning, I had compiled a comprehensive dossier of their financial irregularities, business violations, and potential fraud. I had documentation of Derek's misuse of company funds, evidence of Jessica's fake follower schemes, and a timeline of their harassment toward me that included photos, videos, and detailed notes. The first call I made was to Derek's company's board of directors. I had found the email addresses of all 5 board members and sent them a detailed report of Derek's financial misconduct, complete with bank records I'd obtained through some very creative research methods. Let's just say that when you've spent 50 years in healthcare, you know a lot of people in a lot of different fields, and some of them owe you favors. The second call was to the Federal Trade Commission. Jessica's influencer business was violating several FTC guidelines about disclosure and honest advertising. I provided them with screenshots of her posts, evidence of her fake engagement, and documentation of products she was promoting without proper disclosure. The third call was to their mortgage company. See, Derek and Jessica had lied on their mortgage application about their income and debt-to-income ratio. I had proof of their real financial situation, and I made sure the mortgage company knew about the discrepancies. But I wasn't done yet. While Emma and David were driving up from Cincinnati, I made a few more calls to the IRS about unreported income from Jessica's influencer business, to Derek's car loan company about his inflated income claims, to their credit card companies about suspicious charges that looked like business expenses being run through personal accounts. Emma and David arrived around noon, and we had a wonderful Thanksgiving dinner. David turned out to be a lovely young man, an attorney who specialized in elder law, as it happened. Over dessert, I mentioned my neighbor troubles, and he was appropriately outraged. Grandma Margaret, he said, what they're doing could actually constitute elder harassment under Ohio law. Have you documented any of this? I smiled and pulled out my journal. Oh yes, dear. I've been very thorough. Emma looked at the detailed notes, the photographs, the recorded conversations I'd managed to capture. Grandma, this is incredible. You've basically built a legal case against them. Well, I said, when you're as old as I am, you learn the importance of being prepared. That weekend, the consequences started rolling in like dominoes falling in perfect sequence. Derek got fired on Monday morning. His company's board had discovered the financial irregularities and decided they couldn't risk the liability. By Tuesday, there were rumors in the local business community about his misconduct. By Wednesday, his professional reputation was in tatters. Jessica's Instagram account was suspended pending investigation of her fake engagement and undisclosed sponsorships. The FTC opened a formal investigation into her business practices. Several of her biggest sponsors dropped her immediately to avoid association with the scandal. Their mortgage company initiated foreclosure proceedings on Thursday. Their car loans were called in on Friday. Their credit cards were frozen over the weekend. But the beautiful part was how it all played out publicly. Derek and Jessica had built their entire identity around their success, their lifestyle, their image as young professionals living the dream. When that image crumbled, it crumbled spectacularly and very, very publicly. Derek started day drinking by the second week of December. I could see him on his back deck at 10 in the morning, still in his pajamas, staring at his phone and muttering to himself. The Tesla disappeared, first repossessed in the middle of the night, then Jessica's Range Rover, Then the furniture started disappearing from their house. Jessica tried to restart her influencer career on a different platform, but the internet never forgets. Screenshots of her old posts were everywhere, along with evidence of her fake lifestyle. Every time she tried to promote a product, comments would flood in about her fraudulent business practices. The parties stopped completely. Their friends stopped coming around. Nothing kills a social circle like financial scandal and legal troubles. Derek and Jessica started fighting constantly, screaming matches that the whole neighborhood could hear. Turns out their perfect marriage was about as authentic as Jessica's follower count. By January, they were both working retail jobs just to pay their basic expenses. Derek was stocking shelves at the local grocery store, and Jessica was waiting tables at a chain restaurant downtown. They'd gone from cryptocurrency moguls and lifestyle influencers to service industry workers in less than 2 months. But I still wasn't satisfied. They had made my life miserable for months, had insulted my granddaughter, and had made it clear that they believed my age made me unworthy of basic respect. They needed to understand exactly who they had been messing with. A cold Tuesday in February, I walked over to their house and knocked on the door. Derek answered, looking like he'd aged 5 years in the past 3 months. He was thinner, paler, and had dark circles under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and constant stress. "Margaret," he said, and his voice was different, smaller, defeated. "What do you want?" "I wanted to check on you too," I said sweetly. "I noticed things have been quiet lately. Are you settling in well to your new circumstances?" His face went through a range of emotions: confusion, realization, and then something that might have been fear. "You," he said quietly. "This was all you." "Derek, I have no idea what you mean. I'm just an old lady who couldn't possibly have the skills or connections to orchestrate something so complex." I smiled. "Though I have to say, it's remarkable how quickly things can change when people's true nature is revealed." Jessica appeared behind him, and she looked even worse than Derek. Her Instagram perfect appearance was gone. No makeup, unwashed hair, clothes that had seen better days. "You destroyed our lives," she said, but there was no fire in it, just exhaustion. "Oh dear, I think you're giving me far too much credit," I replied. "I didn't create your financial problems or your dishonest business practices. I didn't force you to lie on loan applications or fake your social media engagement. I certainly didn't make you treat your elderly neighbor with such cruelty and disrespect." I paused. "I simply made sure the right people knew about things you were already doing." Derek's shoulders sagged. "We're losing the house. Everything's gone. Our careers, our reputation, our friends, everything." "That must be very difficult," I said with genuine sympathy. "It's hard when your entire identity is built on things that can be taken away so easily. Youth, wealth, social status. These things are temporary, Derek. Character, on the other hand, that's permanent. And your character was revealed the moment you decided to torment an elderly woman for the crime of existing in your neighborhood." Jessica started crying then, ugly sobs that shook her whole body. "We're going to end up homeless. We can't afford rent anywhere decent. Our credit is destroyed. No one will hire us for anything better than minimum wage jobs." "Well," I said thoughtfully, "that sounds very much like the kind of situation that might force someone to move somewhere more appropriate for their circumstances. Maybe a nice little apartment in a less expensive part of town, where they can start over and hopefully learn some valuable lessons about treating others with respect." The recognition hit Derek like a physical blow. Those were almost the exact words he'd used on me months ago, suggesting I move somewhere more appropriate for someone my age. "You're going to make us homeless," he whispered. "Oh no, dear," I corrected. "You made yourselves homeless the moment you decided to build a life on lies, fraud, and cruelty to others. I just made sure your creditors found out what they needed to know to protect themselves." I smiled again. "Think of me as a public service." I turned to leave, then paused and looked back at them. "You know, Derek, you were right about one thing. I am old, and being old has taught me some very valuable lessons. One of them is that actions have consequences, even when those consequences take time to arrive. Another is that underestimating someone because of their age is a very dangerous mistake." I walked back to my house, and that evening I sat on my front porch with a cup of tea, watching the sun set over my quiet, peaceful neighborhood. The house next door had a for sale sign in the yard by the end of the week. Now, you might be wondering if I felt guilty about what I'd done. After all, I had destroyed two people's lives, taken away their home, their careers, their entire future. That's a heavy thing to carry. And I'd be lying if I said I hadn't thought about it. But here's the thing. Derek and Jessica weren't innocent victims who made a few mistakes. They were predators who had chosen to target someone they perceived as weak and vulnerable. They had made my life miserable for months, not out of some understandable frustration or personal problem, but out of pure, casual cruelty. They believed that my age made me less worthy of respect, dignity, and a place in their community. More importantly, everything I had revealed about them was true. I hadn't planted evidence or made false accusations. I had simply made sure that the people who needed to know about their dishonest business practices, their financial fraud, and their violation of various regulations had access to that information. Derek really was stealing from his company. Jessica really was running fraudulent social media schemes. They really had lied on their loan applications. I didn't destroy their lives. I revealed the destruction they had already caused to themselves through their own choices. The new neighbors who moved in were a lovely retired couple named Bob and Linda Chen. Bob was a retired high school teacher, and Linda had worked as a librarian for 30 years. They were quiet, respectful, and actually invited me over for dinner during their first week in the neighborhood. We've become good friends, and they often join me for coffee on my front porch in the evenings. Emma visits more often now, sometimes bringing David, and sometimes coming alone just to spend time with her grandmother. We've started a tradition of Sunday dinners, and she's been helping me write down some of the stories from my nursing career for a little memoir I'm working on. I still keep that journal, though these days it's filled with happier observations, the changing seasons in my garden, funny conversations with Emma, interesting books I've read, new friends I've made in the community. The pages about Derek and Jessica have been relegated to the back, a reminder of an unpleasant chapter that's now closed. But sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep, I think about the lessons in all of this, about how we treat each other, about respect and dignity, about the consequences of our choices. Derek and Jessica learned that age doesn't equal weakness, that experience can be more powerful than youth, and that the quiet old lady next door might have more resources and connections than they ever imagined. I learned something too, though it took me a while to put it into words. I learned that I don't have to accept disrespect just because I'm old. I don't have to quietly endure cruelty just because someone thinks my age makes me powerless. I have spent decades caring for others, raising my granddaughter, building relationships and skills and knowledge that don't disappear just because I've reached my 70s. Society has this way of making older people feel invisible, irrelevant, like we're just waiting around to die, and should be grateful for whatever scraps of dignity we're allowed to keep. Derek and Jessica embodied that attitude perfectly. They saw an elderly woman living alone and assumed I was weak, isolated, and helpless. They couldn't have been more wrong. If you're watching this and you're young, please remember that the older people in your life aren't just obstacles or inconveniences. We're not just taking up space or holding back progress. We're people with decades of experience, skills you haven't even imagined yet, and stories that could teach you more than you might think. Treat us with respect, not because we demand it, but because we've earned it through the simple act of surviving and thriving for 7, 8, 9 decades or more. And if you're watching this and you're older, please remember that your age is not a weakness. Your experience is not irrelevant. Your right to dignity and respect doesn't expire when you hit retirement age. You have power. Maybe not the same kind of power you had when you were younger, but power nonetheless. Knowledge is power. Connections are power. Patience is power. And the ability to see the long game, to wait for the right moment, to plan carefully and execute perfectly. That's a power that comes with age and experience. Derek and Jessica are doing fine. By the way, it took them about a year to get back on their feet, and from what I hear, they've learned some valuable lessons about honesty, humility, and treating others with respect. Derek got a job with a small accounting firm where he's slowly rebuilding his reputation through hard work and ethical behavior. Jessica started a small business making handmade jewelry, and she's been very careful about honest marketing and authentic social media presence. They send me a Christmas card every year now, and it always includes a simple message. Thank you for the lesson. I think they finally understand that the lesson wasn't about revenge or punishment. It was about consequences, about the choices we make and how they ripple out into the world. It was about respect, dignity, and the dangerous assumption that age equals weakness. As for me, I'm still here in my little house on Maple Street, still tending my roses and drinking tea on my front porch. I'm still volunteering at the elementary school, still going to book club at the library, still having Sunday dinners with Emma and David. I'm living exactly the peaceful, dignified retirement I worked 40 years to achieve, and if anyone else in the neighborhood thinks that being 73 makes me an easy target, well, they're welcome to find out just how wrong they can be. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about hurting someone else. Sometimes it's about showing them exactly who they chose to mess with and making sure they never forget the lesson. Age brings wisdom, patience, and connections they never saw coming. And in the right hands, those can be the most powerful weapons of all. Remember that the next time you see an elderly person and think they're just taking up space in your world, we built this world. We know how it works, and we're not going anywhere. If this story resonated with you, I'd love to hear about your own experiences in the comments below. Have you ever been underestimated because of your age? Have you ever had to teach someone a lesson about respect? Or maybe you've learned to see older people in your life differently after hearing this story. Share your thoughts. I read every single comment, and your stories matter to me. And if you enjoyed this story, please consider subscribing for more tales of life, experience, and the lessons we learn along the way. Getting older doesn't mean getting weaker. Sometimes it means getting wiser, more patient, and infinitely more dangerous to those who underestimate us. Until next time, remember, respect your elders. We've had a lot more practice at being human than you have.